Good morning, everybody. Want to say something for the folks out there. We've had a lot of storms across the country. Dallas caught hell. We're seeing a lot of flooding up in Dallas. It's just coast to coast. We've just had terrible storms over the last 24 hours. Uh, I hope everyone's okay. Send best wishes. Check on your people and make sure everybody's good. Love you, folks. Let's do this. Good morning, everybody. I hope your day is going well. We've got so much to talk about. Philip Ittner will be joining us here in a little bit. Putin is we've got a purge going on in Russia as we speak. It's something, and we want to talk about Phil. His new show is absolutely amazing. But of course, we've got big domestic news also. We've got Trump and his trial. I don't want to talk about it. You don't want to hear about it. It's gone to the jury. Let's hope that they convict him. I mean, given closing arguments, everything that we've been saying has been pretty much spot on. The defense is just imbecilic. They went with their closing being liar, liar, pants on fire. And the prosecution did exactly what I told you they would. So, big middle finger to the smartass that sent me the email that said that if I want to talk about legal issues, I needed to have a lawyer on the show that knew what they were talking about. Sorry, but I actually do talk to lawyers before I get on the show. Where do you think the information comes from? Like I told you, there's a covenant that juries have with prosecutors. They know that in cases like this, that witnesses are going to be criminals. I mean, if there's a witness to a crime that participated in the crime, they're a criminal. They knew what Michael Cohen was before the trial. They know who he is during the trial. And yeah, I absolutely love what the prosecutor said. After 2.5 hours of Michael Cohen is a liar, you can't believe anything he says, yada, yada, yada. Prosecution stood up and said, look, we didn't go get Michael Cohen at the witness store. That guy, Donald Trump, chose Michael Cohen. That's why he's our witness. Because that guy, the defendant, is the person that put Michael Cohen on that stand. And he thought he had enough integrity to do business for him and handle his problems. And that's exactly what I was alluding to. This whole liar, liar, pants on fire thing was never going to work because the jury understands. The jury knows. Yeah, he committed crimes. He went to jail. He went to jail for that guy. So if you want me to talk about Donald Trump, you're going to get things like this. I'm tired of talking about him. I'm tired of talking about his followers. I'm tired of talking about his voters. I'm tired of talking about anybody that can still stomach this person. It's tired. It's old. It's over. If you want me to talk about Trump, I'm going to talk about the fact that he has changed his makeup color from old piss stain orange to diarrhea brown. That's it. That's really all I've got to say about that guy. There's more important to talk about. There really is more important things in the world to talk about. And Padraig-Pesek, De Niro did a great job. He did a great job. Everybody's tired of Trump. Everybody knows what he is. And, you know, like we were talking about in the last show, folks, I don't manipulate what they say. My greatest weapon as a Democratic partisan, and I am a Democratic partisan, I make no bones about it. I am a ride or die Democrat. Let me see the skulls and hearts in the comments of all of you folks that are ride or die Democrats. But I don't make shit up. I don't twist their words. I show you exactly what they say. So we're going to start this show by framing everything we're going to talk about with their words echoing in our ears. I've got a couple quick videos I want to play for you. The first one is from Bacon Face, Steve Bannon, talking about what they intend to do about Project 2025. Let's hear what he has to say about it.
The DOJ is completely corrupt from top to bottom. It's going to have to be purged. It's going to have to be restructured. They're going to have to get rid of tons of billets over there and lots of personnel on the afternoon of January 20th, 2025. They understand this. And the FBI is the American Gestapo. As an institution, they are not worthy of going forward. That's going to have to totally be restructured. I've been strongly for getting rid of the FBI, starting over again with some federal law enforcement to the degree you need it. The DOJ is completely corrupt from top to bottom. It's going to have to be.
There you go, folks. The DOJ that carries their water, that treats them with kid gloves, is not enough. It's not enough. They're going to have to push. They're going to have to put in Trump sycophants. You know, for the first time, I think in my entire life, I actually agree with Steve Bannon. The DOJ needs a purge, but it needs a purge of Republicans. I am really sick and tired of these right-wingers getting treated with kid gloves. And the story that this is going to end with, that we're making our way to, it's just sickening. It's just sickening. But before we get there, let's finish hearing what they have to say out of their own mouths so that we've got a good frame of what these right-wingers are and what they're hearing, what their frame of mind is, what information are they getting. Here we got Greg Gutfeld, one of the most popular guys on Fox News, telling you exactly this is what these right-wing nutters are being told.
But only certain people get criminal mulligans. And January 6th protesters, they don't get criminal mulligans. And here's why. They're the oppressor, right? So the oppressed get criminal mulligans. The people that are complaining, like us, we're actually oppressors and we're losing power. So that's why we're upset. I just got a job at MSNBC. But let's compare the rights between criminals and victims. Okay, the criminals, they get a mulligan. They get to steal up to $900 worth of stuff. They can loiter, sleep, and shoot up in public areas, including playgrounds. They can loot and burn and call it social justice. They can pile up dozens of arrests and never do time. Meanwhile, what about us? Well, we have to change our lives to accommodate risk wherever we go. We have to move out of cities for the sake of the safety of our families and our own safety. That's what's happening. We're being driven out of cities by the oppressed. So I return to my imperfect analogy from yesterday. We had a war over slavery. We knew slavery was inhumane and immoral, but somehow we couldn't solve slavery peacefully.
Here it comes.
It was an evil. But one side refused to acknowledge that it was evil because it was too big of an admission for them to make. Doesn't that feel that way now? That this defiant refusal to reverse this decline argues against the survival of a country. What does that leave you with? It leaves you with you need to make war to bring peace because you have a side that cannot change because then that means an admission that their beliefs have been corrupt all the time. So in a way, you have to force them to surrender.
Or we could make love, not war.
I tried that once.
Or we have an election.
I had to go to a doctor.
So yeah, The right wingers are being told that somehow in this situation, they're the union. They have to make war on us, that elections aren't viable anymore. They're being told democracy is over in priming and preparation for the 2025 project, where the project 2025, where they gut our government in order to support Trump. And they're being told in this situation that they're the heroes because apparently somebody that got a mulligan somewhere, which I never caught that part. That was just complete made up shit. I'm sorry, folks. That was just made up, pulled out of his butt. The only people that got a mulligan were the white supremacists that actually fomented the violence in he's talking about during the Black Lives Matter protests. You know, we had that white supremacist that smashed out the windows in the AutoZone that actually started the violent rioting, and everybody they arrested did time. Nobody got a mulligan, but they're being told they're the victims. They're the victims, and they need to wage war on us. So you have the frame of mind. You have the understanding. I tell you all the time about your importance. I tell you people about your importance. I tell you, if the country is going to move forward, if we're going to get anything done, if we're going to have anything that even resembles the country that was handed to us, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to do it. You're going to have to vote religiously. You're going to have to support candidates. You're going to have to do the work, because this is what they're being told. They're victims in this, that their insurrection was understandable. Their coup was understandable. And folks, it goes back to, I put this up all the time, Voltaire. Whoever can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And they are more than willing and more than ready. You see them interviewed at all the rallies. They're saying, oh yeah, we definitely, it's time for a dictatorship. It's time for a dictatorship. Folks, I'm running through this really quickly because we've got, like I said, we've got a fantastic guest waiting. Philip Ittner is here. You're going to love this. You're going to love this. But we are going somewhere with this. Just stick with me just for a couple more minutes. And when I talk about they're told things that are just ridiculous and detached from reality, so they themselves are detached from reality. I say that so that you can understand just how vital you are and how important what you do is, because the other side, they're hearing stuff like this. They're reading stuff like this. You know, I told you about the Russians fomenting on X, they're supporting all these influencers and they're amplifying their message all over social media. This guy, DC Drano, is one of the biggest. Says, I will no longer be referring to June as Pride Month. If our veterans don't have an entire month to honor their service and sacrifices, then nobody should get one. It's just June. And of course, Brian Tyler Cohen, who I love absolutely, his response to this was, May is National Military Appreciation Month. And the fact that MAGA doesn't know, that shows how little of a shit you actually give about veterans. That's all well and good for us, but you have to understand, their side only saw the top message. Their side only saw those lefties, they want to give gay people. So let me appeal to your inner bigot. Let me appeal to the worst of your humanity, your hate, and tell you they want to give gay people a month of appreciation, but not soldiers. When in fact, there is a month in which we do have Military Appreciation Month. It actually comes before, our month where we just for God's sake, the LGBTQ plus community are just people trying to live their damn lives. And they're utilizing this bigotry, the worst in all of these people, and amplifying it. It's what they are. It's what they hear. That's why you have to, and I'm going to drive it home and drive it home and drive it home. You have to do the work, because these people that are the audience for that message are useless. They're useless to our country. And it echoes in everything. We have this story, and the corporate media is no help. Do not rely on the corporate media. Don't. Because even the Daily Beast, ex-Trump lawyer Jenna Ellis has law license suspended in Colorado. Woohoo! Boy, that sounds like a good deal, doesn't it? And this is echoed all over corporate media. Yeah. Oh, man, what a big deal. She lost her license for 3 years. Engaged in a coup and lost her license for 3 years. She will have her license back halfway through President Biden's next term. And they're talking about that like it's a win. Yeah, the DOJ needs a purge. It does, but it needs a purge of Republicans, because that woman should never get her law license back as long as she lives. She betrayed her oath. But yeah, the right wingers, man, victims all the time. And the billionaires that fund this, they know what they're doing. It's just a shiny object. Just appeal to the worst in humanity. And Republicans will follow that shiny object every time. You've got Timothy Mellon. We had a show about where we were talking about the Mellon family and how they quietly fund the Republican Party to the tunes of tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. Just dropped another $5 million in RFK's pocket for his war chest. You remember Timothy Mellon? We talked about him. I told you this is the picture we can find of him. This is a 20-year-old picture of him. He doesn't look like this anymore. He's a hermit up in Montana. But just dumped $5 million on RFK. Interestingly enough, he's also writing a memoir with a publishing company called Skyhorse Publishing. The head of Skyhorse Publishing is the chair founder of RFK's Super PAC, who happens to also be publishing a book, because they really think the October surprise is still Hunter Biden. I am not kidding, folks. I am not kidding. They really think that Hunter Biden is their ticket to the golden land, man. Their golden ticket to the promised land. Skyhorse Publishing is publishing a tell-all book from Hunter Biden's baby mama that he pays $20,000 a month in child support, is going to turn around and write a tell-all book about her stripper days and wild parties with Hunter Biden, and that is somehow going to change all our mind. That, hey, fascism's okay because, Hunter Biden likes to party. I know I'm running through this quick, but I really want to get to Phil. I really do. We've got a great story, a huge story going on in Russia. And where I'm going with this is it never stops with them. It never stops with the right. It is always made up crap. It is always billionaire frat boy funded crap from the border. And they're going to fund a caravan. It's going to be here. It's going to show up before the election. Does every year. Gas prices, they're going to take the switch from gas or from the summer blends over to the winter blends, and they're going to jack up prices on gases right before the election. They do it every time. Over and over and over and over again, we get this made up crap. Well, turns out Samuel Alito made it all up. He lied. He lied. You know, you heard the story about him flying the insurrectionist upside down flag, and he made up this story about, oh, well, it was because him and his neighbor got into a dispute, and they called his wife the C word. And you know, I questioned that story. I said, there's more to that. I just didn't know they were flat out lying. I knew there was more to it, because nobody just throws that around. You know, nobody just calls you the C word. There's something going on there. There's some interaction. There's something. And apparently it was pretty rough. It got pretty heated. Thank you for the support. I really appreciate you. You let me do this full time. All of you folks showing your support out there, I really appreciate you. I apologize for not reading all your comments, but I'm really trying to blaze through this because I really want to get to Phil, because there is a setup for Phil, and it's going to take a few minutes because there's a purge going on in Russia right now. But Sam Alito flew an upside down flag at his house. Just to recap. Same thing the insurrectionists were doing at the same time. But he floats the story, says, well, oh, this Democrat, got to blame it on a Democrat, neighbor of his went to a rally, and they had some signs that my wife found offensive, and she talked to him about it, and they called her the C word, and she was so upset that she just flew the flag upside down because the country's in distress. How dare they call me the C word? That story didn't fly. I knew there was more to it. There was something wrong. Turns out that it's just all a lie. I mean, the verbal back and forth happened, but the Alitos apparently were the aggressors. So much so that their neighbors called the cops. And I don't know if Samuel Alito didn't know that the cops got called, but you know, the cops tend to be pretty good about writing dates down when they get a report of an incident. Yeah, the incident happened February 15th. The flag was flying in January. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. He told you they put the flag up because of the verbal altercation. That happened February 15th. The flag was flying with the insurrectionists in January. Seems somewhat important to this story, doesn't it? The man is a liar. He's a flat out liar. He supports insurrection. He needs to resign from the Supreme Court. But you heard all that these people are saying. You heard Steve Bannon telling them directly, we're going to purge the government to support our insurrection this time. And you heard Greg Gutfeld, elections, man, elections are broken. They don't matter because we don't get what we want, and we're the victims. I mean, they want to throw us in jail for a coup, but they won't throw them in jail for vandalism. My God, the humanity. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. So people, when I tell you, you are what's important. You are what's important. If we are going to move forward as a country, hear me. You have to do it. You have to do it. You have to support the candidates. You have to get out and vote. You have to volunteer. These people, these MAGA people are worthless. They're less than worthless. They're a hindrance. and they've infected our government, and we have to gut it. We have to clean it up. We have to get the Samuel Alitos out of it. That's what I want to leave you with domestically, folks. We have the amazing Philip Ittner here. Thank you for joining me today, my friend.
My pleasure, Paul. Good to be here.
Oh my God, guy, let me tell you something. I cannot say it enough. On the Edge is amazing. It is
Thank you.
amazing. I'm telling you, guy, the 2 episodes out now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both the first one with I'm gonna kill his last name.
Michaela Kuleba.
Kuleba,
Michael,
yeah.
Basically. Michaela.
Yeah, Michaela Kuleba and Vladimir Yelchenko in the second episode.
And
yeah.
Michaela, I wanted to make sure that he was our first guest because he's the country's preeminent advocate for children who have been abducted and who are undergoing ethnic cleansing and in essence genocide by definition in the UN Charter. Well, not the UN Charter, but in UN ruling. He was important to me that he would be our first, and then Vladimir Yelchenko as one of Ukraine's preeminent diplomats. We talked about sadly how there was no diplomatic solution to be had at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, much less back in 2014. But then also, sadly, we discussed the possibility of a diplomatic resolution in the near future, and that sadly, again, looks pretty bleak. Now, we recorded it right before Vladimir Putin came out and said that he would entertain the idea of talks with the lines as they are now frozen.
Yeah,
which is completely.
Just give me everything I took.
Yeah. Just give me everything I took. And we can talk about some of the other stuff, but at the end of the day, we get to keep what we killed a bunch of people for.
Let me throw something out there, bud. Real quick, let me throw something out there. The first episode with Michaela Kuleba, I'm telling you, man, it is so important to hear people, to get this information not filtered through the corporate media. Yeah. It is. Because
that's why we did it. That's why we made it. I mean, I got 25 plus years under my belt of working in corporate media, and I knew what they were going to do here. Paul, I knew what they were going to do here. And what I've done is I've poured a lot of money into the studio and the production value shows. We've got some fine tuning to do and stuff like that. But, I wanted to make it look good. I wanted to hire a staff of Ukrainian journalists who could help me through.
You got to spray foam under that table, brother. Because when Ambassador Yelchenko would get excited, he would slam his head out on the table and it would echo.
We're working it out. We're working it out. Yeah.
I loved it though. I think it is how impassioned he is. How just the sincerity. But he is such a skilled diplomat that he would.
What was nice is that we had a conversation that was, because he is more or less retired, we were able to talk about stuff that if he was still in the employ of the Ukrainian foreign ministry, he wouldn't say. So we caught him at a really good time. He's only really been out of holding a post for about a year.
Tell the folks in the audience they don't know who Yelchenko is. They don't know he's the former ambassador.
Vladimir Yelchenko is a career diplomat with about 40 years, stretching back to the very, very beginning of Ukraine as a nation state. He was at one point he was the ambassador to Moscow. He was the very last Ukrainian ambassador to Moscow in 2013 in the run-up to the Maidan revolution and the conflict in Donbass and Crimea. he was the very last Ukrainian. So he had some insight in the podcast to talk about like what that period was like and how the diplomatic corps, the Ukrainian diplomatic corps, knew that there was no point in them trying to engage with Russia diplomatically, that they were dead set on seizing land by force of arms and by fomenting a separatist movement in Donbass. They knew it, and not to put words in his mouth. This is kind of, we didn't touch on that exact topic, but this is generally accepted. And he reiterated it because he talked about like being in Sochi as the Ukrainian ambassador to Moscow, being in Sochi during the 2014 Olympics, and the president comes over, the stooge president of the Kremlin comes over to Sochi, and he has these crisis meetings with Putin. And Yushchenko, who was there, says, he saw it in his eyes that there was no point in negotiation, that that Putin was dead set on military conquest. And then we fast tracked through a lot of other different years and periods in his time. I mean, he was at the top of Ukraine's foreign ministry, and he was Ukraine's ambassador to the United States. He was their representative at the United Nations, and we get into a whole bunch of discussions about that. We dish a little bit about the Russian diplomatic corps and what's happening to them currently in this war, how they're being sidelined.
Yeah, I want to touch on that for a little bit. Before we do, folks, I need you to understand. Down in the comments or in the description, there's a link for Phil's page where you can find this show. This interview is fantastic, folks. This is exactly what we need, Phil. What you're doing is exactly what I can't rave about it enough. It is. It is the real information. What you get normally is you get some guy like what the Washington Post just did with the Alito story. We found out that they had the Alito story 3 years ago, but they said, you don't really need to hear that the Supreme Court justice is flying the insurrectionist flag at his house. Because they wanted access. They wanted to keep their access. Corporate media, you've seen it firsthand. They make these choices.
Inside that industry, yeah.
And years. What you
and look, and the same thing
is amazing.
And the same thing. Well, the reason why I started it, the reason why I started the podcast again was because I saw, having been a veteran of actually working inside, you see how the sausage is made, sort of thing. I knew what they were going to do here, and they've done exactly what I thought they were going to do. They have vacated this place, for the next shiny object along, and that's not to be dismissive of Gaza or for the fact that, and this is just what Americans do in every presidential election year, is they don't look externally, they look internally. It's just
they pander to Republicans also. They do.
Yes.
Just admit it.
I mean, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. But when you're a news editor in an American presidential year and you're an American news organization, you're not really looking for foreign news. So I knew they were going to move away from foreign news this year in particular.
It takes work.
All throughout this conflict, I knew that they would lose interest here. This is far too complex a story for them to knock into a 2-minute 15 long package where they'll go out, and they have to go out where the bang bang is. They have to go to the hospitals, or they have to go to the internally displaced people, or they have to do the emotional thing that is going to draw the ratings or the clicks. My intention has never, even when I was doing all the vlogs, running up to me launching On the Edge, my point was always there is a lot of complexity here. This is not a simple conflict. This is a conflict that goes back centuries and has ramifications that are enormously important. And the networks were only looking at it as any other conflict that they would ever have covered, whether it's Libya or Afghanistan or Iraq or all the rest. And those were important wars. And I was an eyewitness to all of them. But this war is going to change it already has, and it will, in the conclusion of this war, change the landscape in Europe. And the fact that our news organizations are woefully letting us down because they either can't afford it, or because they can't sell it in a nice little tight package, or because they're distracted by other things domestically, is a great disservice. And so I finally said, screw it. And I just, started throwing money at the problem, built the studio. We're proud of the studio. I've got contacts from 25 years, and I'm hoping to draw them in. We had a little flub for this upcoming Sunday's premiere, so it might be delayed by a day or two. But our purpose is still to provide a far more in-depth, comprehensive study of what is actually happening here in a way that brings to bear my skills as a journalist. Paul, you've let me rant here for a while, and you're letting me do it because I articulate my ideas well. It's born out of years of professional training, and that's not ego. That's just, do you want a brain surgeon or do you want the car mechanic to be working on your frontal lobe? It's just a different skill set, and I've got this skill set that I've brought with me from decades of working in the mainstream media and the corporate media, and I'm bringing it to bear here because we're not getting the story from here. So
yeah, and I wanted to touch
my soapbox, and I'll step down. But thank you for letting me express myself.
I want you to. I'm telling you, I'm not here for me. This isn't about me. This is about getting the right thing done in the country, for the country, for the world.
And I'm not here for me. I'm here for Ukraine.
I'm not one of those creators that are like, oh shit, Phil's got a great show out there. I can't introduce my audience to that. They'll go watch Phil. Oh my God. No, I want you to go watch Phil.
No,
I'm telling you. I want to jump in on this. I wanted to jump in. Y'all were talking about Sergei Lavrov and how diminished he has become.
Yes.
Folks, Sergei Lavrov was bar none one of the best diplomats the world's ever known. Really, he's really extremely skilled. But the fact, Phil, that they have bridled him so much, that they have undercut him so, a healthy government, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but a healthy government, our diplomats can go out and they can broker deals. They know where they stand. They're able to say, put their hand out and say, this is what I believe. This is what we'll do. Lavrov can't do that anymore.
No.
Because they're so unstable in Russia.
And also he's in no place it is clear that he is not the one who is going to be implementing any kind of diplomatic solution to the war in Ukraine, because they're not seeking a diplomatic solution to the war in Ukraine, despite what Putin said about, we'll entertain. No, Putin knows what's about to happen. $61 billion of American money and hardware is about to show up in Ukraine, and not to give away too much here, because there's some information that you get privy to on the ground here, and you don't want to betray operational security, as it were. But there are going to be a bunch of new pieces of kit. I'm not portraying anything by saying the F-16 is going to be here before too long. Putin knows what's coming. He knows what's coming. His Kharkiv offensive has been far less successful than maybe it could have been, but I argue not, because he never deployed enough troops. And then also the thing that you've been alluding to, which we do need to discuss, is the chaos in the Kremlin. All of this lends to, he knows what's coming, and I think he knows he's at the high water mark. Things are not going to go well for Russia very soon. It's not going to be easy. War is fickle, but he knows what's coming.
I've got to run through about 5 pictures real quick. I want you to stick with me, because I believe you're 100% right. And I think Putin has figured out just how corrupt everything's been. And I think he's digging in for the long haul, to be quite honest with you. Instead of doing the smart thing and trying to figure out a solution out of this where Russia comes out ahead, I believe he is digging. They're having a purge right now, and I actually made a list of it so that I could go through and order what's happened. First, we have the first that before even Shoigu got removed. We started with Timur Ivanov. He was Shoigu's top deputy in the Ministry of Defense. Right.
In charge of construction for all military sites.
Gets the axe, gets arrested. This is him behind glass being charged. That was the first thing that happened. Then Shoigu, who has been, I told everybody before, Shoigu was Trump's cushion, Putin's cushion in the military. Putin's comes out of the KGB. He does not come out of the military. Shoigu was his guy that made him safe with the military, but Shoigu became so inept and corrupt that it's actually just Putin can't do it anymore. And it caused in the culmination with Prigozhin going after Shoigu.
Also, also keep in mind, Shoigu is not a military man. He did not rise up through the ranks of the Russian military. He was in charge of, in essence, Russia's FEMA.
Yeah.
And he went from being head of FEMA to being head of the Ministry of Defense. Not a soldier.
This is Sergei Shoigu, folks. The guy on the right with Evgeny, the guy on the left is Gerasimov, Evgeny Gerasimov. This is Shoigu on the right. What's happened is first we have his deputy removed. Then Shoigu is given basically a window retirement, moved out of his job as defense minister. Think Lloyd Austin, folks. He was the equivalent of Lloyd Austin. Removed as the head of the Ministry of Defense. Then we have the third and fourth shoe dropped immediately, almost same day. We had Yuri Kuznetsov. I'm going to kill it. Kuznetsov from the Ministry of Defense. He was the head of the personnel department. This is Kuznetsov. Hold on 1 second. This is Kuznetsov. This guy, Kuznetsov, and this guy, that was the head of personnel in the Ministry of Defense. Then this guy. No, I'm sorry. That was.
I think that was Popov.
No, that was Vadim Shiwazo. Shamarin. Vadim Shamarin. He was he was the head of communications for the Russian general staff. He worked for Gerasimov. He was Gerasimov's head.
Shoigu and Gerasimov's general staffs and stuff.
This is Kuznetsov. He was the head of the personnel department in the Ministry of Defense. Those two got taken out basically the same day. Then following that, I mean, you've got Gerasimov's top aide, you've got Shoigu's top aide. Shoigu's moved out. And then Vladimir Vertelevsky, he was the head of procurement, one of the major divisions of procurement in the Ministry of Defense. This guy gets arrested. And this is all happening within days. Within days. And then Major General Ivan Popov, who you mentioned before, Popov gets arrested.
Popov was a big deal.
Yeah, he originally came out complaining about the corruption. This is Popov, folks. I just want you to be able to put faces to names.
And he's a field commander. His soldiers love him. He is well regarded. He actually he's a field commander. He fights. Yeah,
so he's complaining about the corruption. He's saying, look, we're having a hard time winning here because, we've got vehicles with dry rotted tires. It's insanely crazy things like when you put a light bulb in a plane that goes supersonic, you can't go down to Home Depot and buy a light bulb. They melt under the heat. The Su-25s, none of the marker lights worked on them because instead of actually buying the light bulbs that are intended to go on a supersonic aircraft, they just went down and bought the cheapest light bulb they could get their hands on and shoved it in there, and they would melt. They would literally melt on the plane. The tires. I was talking about this with
it's all the little things they thought they could skim off without anybody noticing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a kleptocracy. It's a kleptocracy.
And I think this was the straw that broke the camel's back with Shoigu. This is Shoigu's mistress's house in Billionaire Row in Moscow. She went from being a stewardess that worked for the Ministry of Defense. She was a stewardess to running a company that got $6.5 billion, billion rubles in Russian defense contracts.
Which is
and
still,
she lives here
tens
with
of
Shoigu's two
dollars.
illegitimate children.
Yeah.
Huh?
I'm trying to think of the billions into dollars. It's still, I mean, what did you say? 9 billion was the sum that they were accused of taking?
6.5 billion
6.4 billion rubles. I mean, the ruble to the dollar is
about 100 to 1 right
that's
now.
Still, yeah. I mean, you're still looking at, a
close
sizable
to
amount
three
of
quarters
dollars.
of $750 million.
Yeah, hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm sure. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, look at Tamir Ivanov, who had an entire block of St. Petersburg, which is, I mean, that's like prime Manhattan territory when you're talking the equivalency in Russia. And he had an entire block of it, a warehouse turned into his kind of, urban mansion. But it's interesting that we see this happening, and we need to also kind of pull back and look at the bigger picture. What does this mean? And I think there's this, because he brought in Belousov. We haven't talked about.
Let's land this plane. This is Andrei Belousov.
Yeah, go for it.
This is Andrei Belousov. He is a technocrat who made his bones going after oligarchs when the invasion first started. Putin had apparently had a lot of internal pushback with how much this was going to cost, and it was Belousov that went after the oligarchs and said, "Shut up and open your wallets. This is going to happen." And Putin backed Belousov in that exchange, actually went against Shoigu in that situation. And this is where Belousov made his bones. Yeah. He's a bean counter.
Yeah, he's a bean counter, also not a soldier, doesn't hold any weight in the Ministry of Defense, basically, a bean counter, as it were, an accountant, an economist, that sort of thing. Suddenly now, and also, by the way, even in his capacity as an economist, he was relatively unknown. I mean, those who study these kinds of things knew who he was, but he was not a national figure, and he has been just catapulted to one of the most important positions in Russia. He will not hold he has no alliances. He has no fidelity. There's no allegiance or loyalty to him because he comes out of nowhere. He is, I am starting to believe, Paul, that Putin's looking for a scapegoat, and he's going to scapegoat the army. There definitely looks as though there is a clash going on between the intelligence, and this is nothing new in Russian history, between the
FSB,
intelligence
the
community,
KGB, and the military,
the security apparatus, whether it was back in the day the NKVD or the oh darn it, why am I the Chekists, or those guys back in the Tsarist imperial times. There's always been a strong security apparatus in Russia that has held a lot of power, and real, like, I can execute you, I can throw you into prison for the rest of your life, I can do whatever I want to, real tangible, I'll fuck you up power. And that has always been kind of counterbalanced with the military, which has always been looked at by the czars and by the leadership in Moscow as the greater potential threat, because they they have, hundreds of thousands of guys and tanks
Very
and
loyal
artillery
soldiers.
and very loyal soldiers, and the whole thing is built on that kind of system.
Let me ask you
But
this. It's kind of like we were talking about.
Let me just wrap this up, Paul, briefly. Is that there's definitely a clash going between the intelligence and the security apparatus and the army. And if I were to pull back to that, 1,000, mile kind of looking down on it all, I think Putin is positioning the military to take it in the neck for the catastrophe of this war, and he's going to use his old buddies in the FSB to try and stick them in the neck and make them and he'll use it through all the corruption, which is not true because the entire system is built on corruption. But he's going to try and chuck the military under the bus. The only question is, one, will he succeed? And two, will it be enough to protect him from the catastrophe of what's going to happen in this war?
This is where I was going. This is the question I was going to. It's like we were talking about with Lavrov. When you see something like that happen to Lavrov, there's something going on that's causing it. You can say, why is this happening? And what the answer to that question is actually more interesting than what's going on, that Lavrov has been diminished as much as he has. This situation, it smacks to me, and I could just be fear talking, but I'm looking at what's going on here, and the quick succession, the purge. It looks almost to me putting, going with the type of person that he's put in as the defense minister. It just looks to me as though he's digging in. It looks to me as though, and I think he's making, let me finish this because I think he's made a tremendous miscalculation here. It looks as though he's digging in for the long term. He sees the massive corruption and he knows they cannot, there's no positive outcome that can come out of this because no one is fearing Russia anymore. They look so disgustingly corrupt that, look, you can't even defeat Ukraine. I mean, really? And we're supposed to fear you? I think he's trying to clean house, but he's making a huge tactical error because this guy, Borisov, pisses off the oligarchs. They do not like him. They hate this man. Then Shoigu, as corrupt as he was, the whole system is built on corruption. The generals in the field, Shoigu was their guy. He's like, I'm stealing mine, you steal yours, just do your job. Shoigu's gone. That leaves Putin with a vulnerability with both the military and the oligarchs. And all he has saving his butt is, like you say, the FSB. And I think he may have miscalculated here. This may actually be the beginning of the end for Putin. Or am I just...
No, I mean, I think it's a desperate ploy. And it may pay off. I'm not willing to say it's not going to pay off. I'm just saying he's clearly trying to find a way to shift the blame from him to somebody else. And it's fraught with difficulty because you're right. Shoigu had a relationship with his generals in that I'm going to steal a little, you're going to steal a little, we're all going to do well, we're all going to, we're going to benefit. And then what Prigozhin and many of the actual frontline soldiers and officers in the Russian military know is that this has been a shit show from day one. And that it's because of Shoigu. Shoigu had an allegiance within the officer corps, and I'm talking the top echelon, because they all were wetting their whistle. But the guy, when it came to actually fighting a war, a lot of guys like Prigozhin, who was a mercenary, but he was still thinly veiled organ of the state, took it to Shoigu and said, "You screwed this up. Where's my artillery? Where's my supply chain?
That was Popov. That was Popov.
Yeah, right." And it was Popov along with this as well. Is a lot of this criticism that was directed at the corruption. But nevertheless, the structure was such that Shoigu had his boys. Shoigu's now gone. Belosov will not be able to go to the general staff, who was, if not obedient or allied with Shoigu, benefiting from the system Shoigu was at the head of, and he's going to suddenly start saying tighten your belt and actually do shit. And likewise also with the oligarchs, Belosov comes from nowhere. He has no clout. No, it ain't going to happen. This is a Hail Mary by Putin, because he knows this whole thing potentially is really going to get bad.
I really believe, Phil, that this,
and he knows
really believe that this is an attempt by him. He thinks he's digging in. He thinks he's burrowing in. He thinks he's fixing his problem. But and everybody says Gerasimov has the lifespan of milk in the Sahara right now. The writing's on the wall. Gerasimov is gone. He is. They've been removing his deputies. And that's what they did with Shoigu. They took his most powerful deputies, took them out first, and then Shoigu disappeared. I believe 100% that what folks are saying about Gerasimov is right, that he is gone. He's out. And as soon as they do it, as soon as he loses Gerasimov, I think there's so much unrest in the officer corps, so much anger in the officer corps. I mean, look at his.
Well, and they've got 500.
Was literally his best friend.
Yeah, and they're north of 500,000 casualties. And what have they gotten for it? Not a lot. Not a lot. And they're not going to hold on to everything they have now. And I don't think I don't think Putin is looking at the long term in terms of this conflict, because I think when the second we actually did when the 61 billion was passed in Congress, that it was like, well, that takes us through the election no matter what, that we will make it through the election, and then we'll see. Then we'll have to make a reassessment. And if God forbid Trump gets in, then we're in one world, and if Biden gets in, then it's you lost, Vladimir. You're gonna lose. You're gonna lose, and you're gonna lose badly, because that's another 4 years of presidential. That's the Oval supporting you, and the head of NATO, and the 61 billion will take, and not only that, Paul, but we're in a different phase of the war. A lot of new things, the F-16s and this decision that will inevitably come, that Western weapons will be able to be used in staging areas inside Russia's territory, which is the right thing to do. I know that that's a debate that's being discussed back home, and I think it's an inevitability that they will. They might still try and put restrictions on it. Don't strike into urban centers or whatever, what have you. But they're gonna let. They're
who had
Jake Sullivan be damned.
Yeah. Who had Emmanuel Macron emerging as this EU's Churchill?
Yeah.
Who had that on their bingo card? Who had that on their bingo card?
I have a different take on Macron, but yeah.
Let me play you a video from him. Let me play you a video from him. This is Macron just yesterday.
Le sol ukrainien, oui, est attaqué de fait depuis des bases et qui sont en Russie. Alors comment on explique aux Ukrainiens qu'il va falloir protéger ces villes et au fond tout ce qu'on voit en ce moment autour de Kharkiv, si on leur dit vous n'avez pas le droit d'atteindre le point d'où sont tirés les missiles? On leur dit on vous livre des armes mais vous ne pouvez pas vous défendre. Donc nous on reste exactement dans le même cadre. On pense qu'on doit leur permettre de neutraliser les sites militaires d'où sont tirés les missiles, et au fond les sites militaires depuis lesquels l'Ukraine est agressée, mais on ne doit pas permettre de toucher d'autres cibles en Russie, et évidemment des capacités civiles ou d'autres cibles militaires. Je vous montre.
Yeah.
He's saying this. You can't see it. Olaf Scholz from Germany, who's been
just
Mr.
off his
Cold Feet,
shoulder.
was
He's in a
standing
conference
next to
with
him.
Yeah,
He was
Schultz
standing next to him, and it's like
he wanted to get out of frame as much as he possibly could. I'm sure.
yeah, because Schultz is like, oh,
I don't want a piece of this.
Yeah.
My electorate is not, but he's actually, by the way, he's wrong. His electorate is actually more pro-Ukrainian than he is. He's responding to a lot of powers,
blue bloods
within
in
his
Germany.
own country. Yeah, the blue bloods and the industry, and also the kind of anti-war constituency in Germany. But I think Macron is great for doing what he's doing. Of course, he's 100% right. The analogy has been made that, like, when we were getting Lend-Lease, when we were flying, giving B-17s to the Royal Air Force during the Blitz or whatever, and if we had said, you can protect London, but you can't fly across the channel and hit the airfields where the Germans are staging their, putting together their staging parties to attack London with the Blitz, they would have gone, what? And it's just military. It's 101. So of course they should be able to strike at the areas where Russia is staging, getting ready to attack them. It's ridiculous that they can't do it now. That's going to happen. I think a lot of this is kabuki theater because it's an inevitability. And I also think that Macron is being a little performative as well, because and it's great that, and I'm not against it. I am not criticizing. If he wants to take that torch and run with it, go for it, baby. But he also knows. I think it is so interesting to see world leaders right now talking about what's happening in Ukraine, especially NATO leaders who know what's about to happen. What's about to happen. And we have not seen the $61 billion. We haven't seen that yet. We're not really.
Those shells are just arriving.
We've seen shells arriving. Yeah, we've seen shells arriving. We got 100 Bradley fighting vehicles just the other day. That's great.
Phil, it doesn't take a genius. We kept saying we're not sending the long range ATACMS. We're not sending them. They just hit a base that was too far for anything they claim to have. They've got the ATACMS. They've got the long range ATACMS. Yeah, I mean, everybody was like, okay. And there's a lot of
talk about the Russians. Yeah. There's a lot of talk about how the Russians have this kind of GPS jamming system, and that's cause for concern, but it's not going to stop things. And I think that Putin knows this, and world leaders know this, and I think especially our military guys who are advising our leadership know this. The battlefield's going to change. The war in Ukraine will not look the same in about, I'd say about 6 weeks time, a month maybe. If you're being optimistic, 8 months. 8 weeks. If things don't go.
Well, it's like your conversation with Ambassador Yelchenko, where we was talking about, look, the Ukrainians know the clock's ticking. The clock is ticking. It's been 10 years, starting with
there's that too.
Taking
yes.
Crimea.
They're
very aware that they've got to be aggressive.
Point, right? Yelchenko's point is that he is afraid that it will settle into a forever war, and it'll be like a North Korea, South Korea kind of thing, where it's just always there, and there's a DMZ, but you just get locked into this thing, and it's always going to be there. And I think I would never ever presume to know more than Ambassador Yelchenko, but I think there's a military aspect to it that we didn't talk about, and that is that things on the ground, the military, and that's not fair. We did kind of talk about that. We did say that there is, before anybody goes to the table, there's going to be, not have to be, but there will be inevitably a change on the ground militarily. And my feeling is that the winds will change in Ukraine's advantage very soon because that money will come online. New weapon systems that they have been requesting for a long time, including F-16s, which the Russians are clearly terrified by. Otherwise, they wouldn't be squawking as much as they are about them. The ATACMS, as you say, are most likely here. The stockpiles for them.
Well, they ran
There will be
Ukrainian
more.
pilots
There will
through our
be
fighter
more
school.
Patriots. There are more, and look, the F-16s are going to be in the air soon. I don't know exactly when, but soon. And they're also getting more Patriots, which means that there will be more air defense, so they can alleviate some of the assets that they have defending the cities and move them forward. You can even move Patriots forward if they get enough of them, and I think there's a good chance they're going to get more than we publicly know. But that has not come online yet. And when it does come online, the momentum is going to shift back. I firmly believe this is going to shift back into Ukraine's, and it's going to be, we'll see how it goes, but I mean, it might be part of a very large offensive and a shift. And because the doom and gloom about what Ukraine is capable of is completely wrong right now. So many and again, it falls back to what we were talking about earlier. There's not a proper press corps here. They don't really know what's happening here. I mean, look at that. Look at the date lines of so many of the articles that come out about what's happening in Ukraine. Where are they? They're in London. They're in Washington, D.C. They're not here. The press corps, by and large, with some admirable exceptions, are not here, and they don't know.
In 2 weeks, we have a massive meeting in Lucerne.
That's right.
2 weeks.
Yep.
And no one knows it. No one in the United States knows that there's about to be a massive summit. I mean, you're talking about when they write it in the history book,
and the
it's going to be like
ambassador
Potsdam. It's going to be like, and no one in the corporate media is telling their audiences about Lucerne, about why it's being hosted,
how it's being put together, who are the representatives. Why now? Biden, as of right now, is not going to go, and there's some talk, because there are people who are paying attention to this. It's not getting the traction that it should, but there are people paying attention to this, and the criticism is being leveled against Biden that he's going to be going to a fundraiser as opposed to coming to Lucerne. There's talk that maybe Zelensky is urging Biden to be there. I think that's performative, because Zelensky is smart enough to know that the U.S. president is not going to come to Lucerne in the middle of a presidential election. And also, in addition to that, and this is another reason to tune into the second episode of On the Edge with the ambassador, is that we talk about that to a certain degree, that this is not, we're not there yet when it comes to negotiations. Lucerne is a way for the 50 nations are going to be there. 50. It's the opening, and it is also a way for them to expand beyond NATO and Western powers. They're trying to bring in some of the global South. They're trying to bring in BRICS. Modi has said he's going to go. If Modi's going to go, is that going to put pressure on Xi because of the Chinese-India soft power issue that is going on? Is that going to provoke them? Putin is not going to come, not just because he hasn't been invited, but the organizers say he hasn't been invited because there's been no sincere overture by the Russians to show interest. That may or may not be the case, but regardless, clearly Lucerne is about trying to get the entire international community, not just Western powers, but the entire international community, to get together, talk about in one voice what they can then bring to Moscow and pressure Putin to end this disastrous war, because it's only going to be more death. The die is already cast. They're not going to get back Odessa. There's a very good chance that Crimea is going to be under direct threat very soon. They can try and hold on to the meager advances they made around Kharkiv, but that's tenable at best. They can probably hold on to Donbass, maybe the land bridge that connects to Crimea. These are all negotiable, and discussions can be had. But they're trying to bring in all these other different parts of the international community, and only then will the world community try and bring this to Putin, because it's on Putin's, the ball is in Putin's court. And Biden doesn't have to be there for that stage.
Yeah. And the only reason that you have Putin, who's just recently come out and said, if you'll give me everything I've taken, we can talk peace. The only reason he's saying that, the only reason he's saying that is things like the Ukrainian pilots just came out of fighter tactics school. We have just trained their pilots on that how to work with not just being a good pilot, but to utilize all of the weapon systems that we're deploying in one cohesive, orchestrated way. And I honestly, Phil, I hate to put my neck out there and make predictions, but you've got the corporate media saying, "Oh, the summer's going to be horrific for Ukraine," and yada yada yada. No, I think by the time the ground is frozen again, Ukraine has air superiority for the first time in this conflict. I believe they will have air superiority, and you will start seeing major gains on the ground.
For the first time, they're going to be able to fight with NATO military doctrine. We have trained their land forces on NATO combined arms. It's combined armed forces doctrine. It's using everything all at once in conjunction with one another. But one of the most important key elements of that is command of the sky. And we never gave Ukraine the capability to control the sky. They will have that capacity, both in defense and with the offensive capability of the F-16 very soon. And by the way, also logistics. What is it? The Swedes just gave a few of these AWACS, these things which Russia only has a handful of as well. Command and control.
Now. They're down to one. They're down to one.
Yeah, it's the doomsaying from the Western press is so out of touch about what if you just connect the dots, you can see that, as I say, in about a month's time, give or take, the battlefield will look completely different than what it looks like now. And that's down to 61 billion. That's down to training these guys on the F-16, providing them with air defense, long-range artillery, letting them shoot into Russian territory. Putin knows. It's about to come down.
I can't help but laugh about that, though, man. If 3 years ago I had told you, Phil, Macron is going to be the guy. He's going to be the one leading the charge. That he's going to have the wind at his back. That he's going to have the support of the people in the EU, and he's going to be talking about, leading the charge and letting them actually attack Russia proper. You would have said, I'm insane. I'm stupid. I need to go back to TikTok. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh my God, that means the Third World War for sure. Yeah. No, it's about to get very interesting. And you're right in being critical of the press corps. They've let people down so badly here, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing here. And I'm not the only one. There's a handful of us here.
They had that Alito story.
People
3 years ago.
I know. Our press corps is broken. Our media, it's the old story of the dinosaur who is dead, but the message hasn't gotten from the tail to the brain yet. And management and the corporate interests will circle the wagons as best they can and suck every last dime they can possibly, but they will also take everybody who is actually at the tip of the spear, the guys on the ground doing the stuff that I used to do, of going to front lines, meeting with people, talking with people, getting to know a people, getting to know a land, getting to know the nitty gritty of going to, well, hey, there's big lines at the at the butane store. What do people know that I don't know? Why are you buying all the butane? Well, because we anticipate this, or there's all this talk of here. Now that's just an obligatory example, but here there's been this example of like there's this new mobilization law, and we're seeing all these videos of the pro Moscow kind of like anti-Ukraine crowd saying, look at these press gangs, grabbing people off the streets. It's always suspiciously that there's a camera running. But anyhow, Ukrainian guys grabbing people and throwing them in buses. What they don't show is what I just saw today, which was a guy who was missing his leg, still in uniform, checking documentation papers that guys are probably enlisted, for the draft, because I lost my leg, motherfucker. I lost my leg so that you could benefit from a free, sovereign Ukraine. And it sucks to be drafted and it sucks for conscription. But, how come you get to sit here in the rear sort of idea, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I sure as hell understand.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I don't know, Phil. I'm just seeing things. I'm seeing what's going on in Russia. I'm seeing the sidelining of Lavrov.
Yep.
That is a story that no one's touched. No one's even looked at it, discussed it. That's why folks need to go to your show so that you can hear people that are actually in country that are dealing with the situation, talking about what's important, what you need to know. Folks, I can't stress this to you enough. If you're a strong, healthy country, you have a strong, healthy diplomatic corps, and they can act with a certain degree of autonomy because everybody's on the same page. Everybody's, it's just a concert. If you're a country in crisis, if you're in panic, if you're holding on to power with white knuckles, that's when you don't allow your diplomats to be diplomats. That's when they, like Yelchenko was talking about, their current ambassador to the United Nations, who does nothing but look down and read the statements. That was a really powerful part of that interview where he's just talking about, just looking down. That's all they do. They read word for word, don't miss a comma.
God forbid you should say something wrong.
Because the FSB wrote this statement for the Kremlin.
That's right. Yep. And Tsar Vladimir the First, Vladimir Putin the First will make, you'll catch hell for
that.
Yeah.
Only happens when you're weak. Mm-hmm. That only happens when you're weak and you're desperate to hold on to power. And this is where, like you said, I think the corporate media has just absolutely failed us.
Yeah.
Because we just had a guy put a comment up. We've been talking about F-16s for 2 years, TikTok. Well, yeah, the pilots, we said, okay, look, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. And we put them through advanced training. We didn't just say, okay, here's how you get it started. Here's your plane. Go do what you always did. No, we have taught them to fight within the NATO structure in a more advanced, more effective, how do you just explain to people this takes time? And the Ukrainian soldiers on the ground have fought incredibly bravely and bought these people time to get to where they are. And I really believe this, Phil. I believe by the end of this summer, everybody in the corporate media is going to be we meant to say.
Well, they're going to race back here. They're going to race back here, and they're going to try and play catch up. But they haven't been here. And again, every byline, every dateline has been Washington or London talking about Ukraine. You have to be here. And you can't just wrap it up in a 2-minute, 15 long package. This is too complex. And they haven't done the hard work that they really should have done with this very, very important conflict. And that's why I started on the edge. So,
Phil, too.
Yeah.
The number you keep bringing up, the 500,000 soldiers, people don't really understand because, you're not in the military. You don't understand. You don't deal with these situations. Why would you know what that means? Russia has a population of 145 million people. But of fighting age, you're talking, 18 to 25. It's got maybe 6 to 8 million. A lot of those split. You've got a lot that aren't going to fight. They're trying to conscript. Losing 500,000 men of that age is hugely significant to your battle capabilities, because for every soldier you field, it takes 6 to 8 standing behind him doing all of the logistics and everything. So losing 500,000 men on the field, that's just not easily replaceable, even for a country the size of Russia.
For what?
Yeah.
What are they really going to get? They're going to be a pariah state for decades. The damage that's been done to their economy is going to take decades to recover from. And they will have lost their cornerstone of empire. They are not going to get back Ukraine. They might hold on to the land bridge, as I say. They might even hold on to Crimea. I don't think that's a done deal, and I mean that in either way. But they have not conquered Ukraine. They have not turned Ukraine back into the colony that they wish it to be. They won their war of independence. That's it. It's done. They are going to have an adversarial former colony on their doorstep, which they used to rely upon as their entryway into Europe and a defensive line that they could build to protect themselves from the imminent invasion they always seem to think is coming from Europe. So that's done. That's just not changing. They don't have the capacity for it. And what does that mean? They lost 500,000 soldiers for? This is gonna come round. It's an inevitability at this point.
And not just the soldiers. I have a friend of mine who's just ex-military, officer in the military. This is all he does is just analyze this stuff. And he just sent me a video. A T90, their latest edition. He was pointing out to me on it where you could see this is their latest and greatest T90, and it was destroyed by a $15,000 drone, which is essentially a toy remote control airplane with a bomb strapped to it. Mm-hmm. Costs $15,000. By the time they field it and utilize it, Ukraine is out $15,000. We do that test firing the phalanx system on an aircraft carrier. When they test fire it, that's $30,000 a shot. You know what I mean? They took out a T-90 tank that's $400,000. I mean, I know they build them cheap over there, but still, they're not that cheap. It's like $400,000, $600,000 by the time they finish with the latest additions to it, with a $15,000 drone. Russia can't keep doing this. They just can't. They can't. They have no control. Even with air superiority, they have no control over this battlefield. None whatsoever.
And if they can't take back Odessa, they don't have command of the Black Sea, even with Sevastopol. Now, Crimea is the more strategically important location, but Crimea can't be supported. It needs support from outside. It doesn't have the water. It's basically what it comes right down to. Is there's no water.
Well, they're right next to. I mean, if you look at a map,
you need to bring in all the material. If you're basically the reason to hold Sevastopol is to keep a naval presence in the Black Sea and then exert your naval power beyond that, hopefully. But they're not going to be able to do that without taking back Odessa, and they're not going to take back Odessa. Ain't going to happen. No way. They're not going to take Kherson. They're not going to take Odessa. Ukraine's military, even if the West does betray them, which I don't think is going to happen, but let's say Trump gets back in, and it is like no more money coming from us, and by the way, I'm going to be a grenade that the Kremlin can throw into the room with NATO, and we'll destroy NATO and fracture it. People still don't get it. The people in Ukraine will fight forever because it's
It'll
an
be
existential
babushkas
threat.
with AK-47s, man.
Literally there. I know grandmothers, little old ladies who are like, if I have to go and start filling up old wine bottles with kerosene, I'll to make Molotov cocktails. I know of local neighborhood defense squads here in Kiev who are still keeping up, like arms, under lock and key. That they're still willing to, put defenses that have been, taken back, but they're willing to put them back on. They are going to protect their homes because Russia's threat is genocide, 100%. And that goes back to the first episode of On the Edge with Mikhailo Kaleba. This is not some sort of just border dispute or regional war. They want to commit genocide in Ukraine. By definition of what it is, what genocide is, they want to destroy the idea of Ukraine as an independent identity, separate from that. That's why they're taking the kids. That's why they're taking the kids. They're trying to destroy the identity.
You know who does get it,
Phil? What option are they giving Ukraine?
Yeah. And you know who does get it? Europe. Europe has, this has been very sobering. Like again, we're talking about your discussion with the ambassador, talking about what how badly Putin miscalculated what the result of this would be. You have a galvanized, uniformed Europe now that used to be petty, back and forth bickering about, we're going to speak French. We're not going to speak your European standardized language. How dare you? And the Castilians are like, well, we want independence and gone.
We have our foreign policy, but then Belgium has its foreign policy, but then Italy has its foreign policy, but then Holland has its foreign policy. Not anymore. That is decreasing. I mean, Orban is still a thorn in people's sides, but that mentality has decreased significantly, and that's saying something because the European Union has always been a little bit, schizophrenic.
Yeah. Well, Phil, I appreciate you being here, my friend.
Thank
Always
you, buddy.
love our conversations.
Sorry if I yapped. If I get on a tear sometimes.
I love talking to you, my friend. I really do enjoy it very much.
To you, buddy.
Let me tell you something. Great show.
Thank
Folks.
Thank you,
go
sir.
Check out On the Edge.
There'll be more coming. We had a, as I said, we had a slight hiccup this week, so we might be delayed by a day or two, but our aim is to put out at least a weekly in-depth, give or take 45 minutes, maybe a little longer, maybe a little less, with people who are really knowledgeable, very smart, and I'll try to bring to bear my extensive knowledge of the region. So it's a conversation. It's not just I'm not sitting there with a bunch of cue cards reading questions, and I am drawing upon my own personal experience as well and contributing to it. So that in this discussion, hopefully, if we get onto a rhythm and we have a good rapport, we can bring a lot more in-depth information to you in a much more conversational, approachable way, so you can really understand the depth of what's coming here. Not just Russian propaganda, not just what you're seeing on social media, which is clearly Russian psyop, intelligence warfare kind of stuff, and not the negligence of the corporate media, which is really only interested in their bottom line, in profit, and do not have a structure to bring you the by and large, not exclusively, but by and large, they don't have the capacity to bring you the real complexities here. This is not a simple conflict, but it will affect every person on the globe. What happens?
We got an audience.
Can't turn away.
We got an audience question for you, Phil. They want to know, what do you think? How much longer do you think Russia will hold out, and will they ever give up?
I think they'll collapse. I don't know. I don't think they'll give up. They'll be too preoccupied with their own, with putting out fires domestically, because Russia's history is a history of that. They suffer. They can't suffer anymore. Massive upheaval and revolution. They suffer. They can't suffer anymore. Massive upheaval and revolution. What I am genuinely hoping for this time around is that they do because this time around is going to be a defeat for Russia that'll be unlike any that they have experienced, because it's going to rip away the idea of empire, and they will have to look long and hard in the mirror. But because they will no longer have, I mean, it's the same thing as Britain when it was Ireland, or it was the Suez conflict, or it was India. Their colonial, when you lose your colonial holdings as a colonial power, you have to internalize and go, what did we do wrong? Who are we if we are not empire? And Russia, long overdue in doing that, will have to do it this time. And not only that, and this might be me being, admittedly, this might be being overly optimistic, is that maybe this time this cycle of revolution and suffering and revolution and suffering, you can break that, and they can finally do the hard work that they themselves need. They know they need to do to fix their own country. But as far as a time frame is concerned, I don't know. I'm so reluctant to do that these days because I've been burnt by that in the past. But I really do think that we're going to be entering a new phase of this war very soon. So we'll have to see. But I think we're finally giving these people the weapons that they need to implement NATO military doctrine, which Soviet military doctrine, which is how the Russians are fighting now. Its defenses are not good against NATO military doctrine. So we'll see.
I think 2 years. I'm saying just under 2 years. Yeah. I think you're going to see a change by the end of summer. I think you're going to see all next year will be highly aggressive Ukrainian offensives. I think that they cross over into the actual Russia proper, that this war spills into Russia proper by the end of next summer. And that's when you start to see the last of the holdouts, the last of the oligarchs that are keeping Putin alive, saying, no, this isn't worth it.
Absolutely possible. Absolutely. The other possibility is that it's just one day we wake up and Vladimir Putin is slipped in the shower, and that's all she wrote. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I think you're absolutely right, Paul.
Slipped in the shower and fell out a 10-story window.
Fell out a window and fell on a bunch of bullets, and then was run over by a bunch of cars. And look, there's another aspect to Russian history in that, as I say, when I say nothing happens, people suffer, and then things change. There is that side to it where like Russian society has this huge calamitous event, and it changes fundamentally in some ways, but then it also kind of reverts back to its baser instincts, and then it builds up to that crescendo again, and then back down and back in. Let's break that cycle. I really hope this breaks their cycle for their benefit.
That is something really amazing about all armies, all empires in Asia. There's something about that continent. They die. And they die, and they die, and they keep dying until your arms are tired from killing them. I mean, it's just their entire history. There has never been a single. It's amazing how much they're willing to just frickin' die. I mean, it's just But
then prestige, but then prestige and honor are more important, because the prestige and the honor of the state is reflected in the citizens. So if it's one thing to die, but to die with no benefit and no bonus to the nation state, so that you can hold your head up high as a Russian, there has to be a tangible result for all the death. The deaths they don't mind. The fact that they might be dishonored and embarrassed, and their empire might be diminished. That's going to be the real risk to Putin, I think.
Well, my brother, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Hal here in a little bit. I thank you for saying
Absolutely.
so long. I know
we're ran late, but I love our
conversations. I love our conversations,
Paul.
man. I really
I'm here for it, buddy. All you have to do is
killing
ask.
it on the show. You're killing it on the show.
You.
It's really
we'll
good.
Have a
Everybody
new one
in the audience.
Our next guest is going to be, if it goes right, it'll be our first remote guest that we have. somebody outside of Ukraine, but with great expertise. And we'll just try and keep bringing folks, good, long, comprehensive, in-depth conversations about this conflict so that they can understand it better.
Good to talk to you, my friend. The
All
link
right, my
is
friend.
in the description.
Anytime.
Go check out the first 2 episodes. I'm telling you, the first episode will tear your heart out. The second episode will open your eyes. It is really good. It is really
Thanks,
good.
buddy.
Phil, you're
I
killing it,
appreciate
my
that.
friend.
That's kind of you.
See you on How,
All
man.
right, sir. And I'm available to you anytime you want, Paul. You just drop me a line.
You're always
a
welcome,
good
my
time
friend.
talking with you. All right.
You're
Even if I
always
get a
welcome.
little long-winded. All right, buddy.
I love having you here, friend.
All right, my friend. Anytime. I'm at your disposal. Take care.
You too, bud. Great show. I love these conversations with Phil. I really do. I absolutely love them. There's so much that the corporate media just doesn't talk about, just doesn't show you. And he's doing an amazing job on his show. Check it out, folks. There's one more thing that I want to talk about before we go. And it's Nikki Haley. I had a lot of people asking me, sending me emails, commenting, asking about Nikki Haley bending the knee, and whatnot. That's a strategy, folks. That is a strategy. That is designed so that when Trump goes down, and he will go down, when Trump goes down before the convention, she's betting on it, that she has not alienated the Trump voter. She can step in and say, oh, well, those Democrats did that to us. Come be with me. That's all that's about, folks. The I'm going to vote for Trump thing, that's all that was just not, no, it's not for VP. She has no desire to be Trump's VP. She really doesn't. I don't think anybody does. Nothing, everything Trump touches dies. Thank you, Rick Wilson. But that's all that was to keep from alienating Trump's voters so that if something happens, if he gets convicted here in the next couple days, that she has not alienated Trump's voters and she can step in and say, come be with me. I'm the only other Republican that has that's able to take the nomination legally. That's all that was about. The other thing that I want to leave you with, though, is don't think it's a good thing. Nikki Haley is in no way a good thing. This is Nikki Haley in Israel right now. I told you about all of these trips that these groups pay for. Well, Nikki Haley's on a funded vacation to the Middle East, signing bombs. Yeah, she's signing bombs. This is what she wrote on an Israeli bomb. Finish them. America loves Israel. Always, Nikki Haley. I know there's a historic thing, like, during the Battle of Britain, they would do things like they would hang peace medals on bombs and send them back and things like that. There's a whole history of this kind of thing. This is one of the most tone deaf, stupid things I've ever seen a politician do. They keep trying to divide us with this Gaza thing. Yeah. Take a look at that picture and tell me who you're voting for. Take a look at that picture and tell me who you're voting for. I love you, folks. I know we went long, but it's always a good conversation with Phil. Thank you for being here. I wanted you to be aware of what was going on. It does look like Putin's cleaning house. Maybe a massive miscalculation on his part. May end up falling out a window. But things are changing in Russia. Pay attention. We don't have time for the shiny objects here. We don't have time for the nonsense. We don't have time for ill-informed, idiotic voters. We need you to keep the country moving in the right direction, folks. And that's why I say, I love you, folks. Thank you. This is Old Texas Paul out. Enjoy some Texas cities at night.